the third week of November 2024. I've been sharing with you everything that I do with our garden harvests once we bring them inside. However, the only thing we are collecting right now are eggs. And the summer garden is for sure done. And other than greens and root vegetables out in the garden still, I'm not getting much harvest from it at this point. I do have these watermelons though left over that never really fully ripened like they should have and got kind of grainy. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut them up and let the chickens have them. I also have these pumpkin spice jalapeños that I harvested from our garden when they were green. They ripened inside really nicely. I'm gonna get these diced up. I'm not 100% sure yet what I wanna do with them. I think I'm gonna be turning them into a hot sauce, but at this point I wasn't sure. So I got them diced up and stored in our fridge until I knew for sure what I wanted to do with them. Next morning, I decided I was going to be making banana bread for the kids, and I had 4 overripe bananas. I got those mashed up. To that, I added 1 egg, about a half a cup of sugar, I also added in a generous portion of vanilla extract. Then I also needed like 1/3 of a cup of melted butter, and I got that a little too hot, so I needed it to cool off. I got that off to the side, and in a separate bowl I mixed together some flour, salt, and baking soda, and then I mixed the dark chocolate chips into that. I like to mix the chocolate chips into the dry mix so that each chocolate chip kind of gets coated in flour, and then it prevents the chocolate chips from sinking to the bottom of the bread or the cake or the muffins or whatever it is that I'm making. It kind of keeps the chocolate chips dispersed evenly in the batter when it's cooking. So once the butter cooled off, I mixed that in with the wet ingredients. Then I added in half of the dry ingredients, got that mixed up really well, and then I added in the rest of it. Into the bread pan, I added avocado oil spray just to prevent the bread from sticking to the loaf pan, and got everything in there. To a 325 degree oven. I let that bake for a little while. Now I'm going to be making the super easy crusty white bread. It's just all-purpose flour, salt, lukewarm water, yeast, mix that together, and then I just let it sit in a warm area in our kitchen while it rises. During this time, I needed to wash up eggs. I recently had a comment asking why we wash the bloom off of our eggs. And the reason is because we go through so many eggs. We are a family of 5, and I do a lot of baking. We also eat eggs for breakfast at least 1 or 2 times a week. We go through a lot of eggs, and it's easier when they are all washed up and in the fridge for me to grab them and hard boil them if I need to, or make scrambled eggs, and I don't have to worry about washing the eggs off before I use them. Once we collect them from the chickens, as long as they are nice clean eggs, we can leave them on the counter for a very long time. And we do that during the springtime and summertime when we're getting a lot of eggs. We do leave them on the counter for a little while. But this time of year, we go through even more eggs than normal because I am baking so much. I like to have them readily available in our refrigerator. I don't wash them with any chemicals. I really don't brush them off too much unless I think they need it. And I just rinse them with room temperature water and get them nice and dried up. And I try not to disturb the shells as much as possible. Get them into some sort of container to prevent any kind of cross-contamination. And then they store in our fridge really well, and they're perfectly fine, and we are able to use them as we need them. At this point, the banana bread is done, so I get that out. The kids couldn't wait. Normally I would let it cool a little bit, but the kids were very excited. They hadn't had it in a little bit, and I had to immediately cut into it. As you can see, the chocolate chips stay right in the middle. They don't sink down too much because I get them coated in that flour. Now it is later on in the day. I really want to get the crusty white bread in the oven. Gotten the bread into the Dutch oven and let that sit for a little while just to get it to rise up in the Dutch oven. I got it into the oven at 450 degrees for like between 20 minutes and a half hour. And once it's starting to brown, I take the lid off of it and then let it continue to cook for between 5 and 15 minutes. It depends on the kind of bread I'm making. And we ended up not eating it until the next day. So this is what this one looked like. I had made this one with a little bit more flour, and it kind of has more of a sandwich bread consistency when I do that. When I make it stickier, it's very, there's usually a lot of bubbles inside of it, and it's so good and it's airy. It depends on the type of consistency that I'm looking for. In last week's video, you saw me make some sourdough. So if you remember, the sourdough starter came from the Homestead Kitchen Cookbook from Eve and Ivan Kilcher. It's just equal parts rye flour and water, and you leave it out on your counter for 3 to 5 days. Essentially collects the organic yeast in the air, and it gets all bubbly. You just kind of have to feed it once in a while, then also replace whatever it is that you use. I decided I was going to try and use it using the white crusty bread recipe that I have. And instead of using the yeast, I was going to use between a half of a cup and a cup of the sourdough starter. I did not let this one cool. We cut into it because we were having it with dinner, and it came out pretty good. It just didn't rise as much as I would have hoped it would. So on this day, we finally got some rain. I'm so happy. We really needed the rain. We've been in a drought, and we're supposed to get rain. At this point, we were supposed to get rain for the next few days. I still had to do something with those jalapenos that I had diced up earlier, and I had remembered I had this fermentation kit downstairs, so I grabbed it, and there was a fermented jalapeno hot sauce, and I decided I was going to make it. I also had found the recipe on the Ball's website. I will have it linked down in the description, but it needed like 3/4 pound of jalapenos, which I had a little bit over that, and then a medium onion diced up. I also diced in a few of the garlic cloves that I had stored in our refrigerator. And then celery, including the leaves. I needed a 1/2 pound of that. Then to 2 cups of filtered water, I added about 1.5 tablespoons of pickling salt and got that dissolved. Then the recipe called for coriander, but I didn't have any coriander seeds. I did have pickling spice, and pickling spice has coriander in it. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to add the pickling spice and we'll see what happens because I have lots of it. I added that to the mixture. Then to a quart-sized jar, I started to pack in the mix of everything, getting it down. I needed to leave about 2 inches of headspace and then pour the water over it. I grabbed one of our chopsticks as a bubble tool because I just wanted to make sure that the water was getting through all of the vegetables that I had packed down. Then I went ahead and poured in the salt water, getting the bubbles out, packing everything down, and I left about 1 inch of headspace on the top. The spring that comes with the fermentation kit sits right on top. There's a vent hole on top of this lid. I got that on there. Then it's supposed to sit for like 2 or 3 weeks. So we will see in a few weeks what that looks like. Other than the ones in my freezer, this is the last of the tomatoes from our garden this year. All of those green tomatoes that I harvested, they ripened inside, and I only had a few green tomatoes left, but I went through them and I took out any yucky ones that were kind of soft or they weren't looking so great. I ended up just giving those to our chickens. And then these ones I got washed up really well, cut the cores out, and then got them into a roasting dish. Had a little bit of the jalapeno, celery, and onion with garlic mix left from making the ferment. So I went ahead and I added that to the tomatoes also with oregano, olive oil, salt and pepper. I got that in a 375 degree oven. So I took these out of our freezer last night. It's just some bracciola, I think it's pronounced, beef from one of our grocery stores nearby that had them on clearance. It's going to be rolling up mozzarella and parsley in this beef that I added salt and pepper to. I could have added olives to it, but Steve doesn't like olives, and I didn't want to add anything that the kids weren't going to eat either. So I tried to keep everything really basic. And I also did not use butcher twine to tie them up because, again, the kids were going to be eating them, and I wanted to easily get them out of the slow cooker later on in the day. I got them seared in the pan just to get browned and kind of hold their shape. Then once they were done searing in the pan, I got them moved over to our slow cooker, did the second round of beef. So at this point, the tomatoes were done. I got them out of the oven. And then I moved the rest of the beef over to the slow cooker with all the drippings from the pan. I took a potato masher and just kind of mashed down the tomatoes and poured those over all of the little beef rolls in the slow cooker and got that covered up. Later on in the day, we decided that we wanted to taste test some of this and see how it was. We cut into it and it was so tender, so good. And the sauce had a little bit of spice to it because there were some of those jalapeños in there. I ended up serving this with carrots and white rice, and it was really, really good. So that is going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you next time. Bye.